All right. Hi, everybody. My name is Haley, and I run the social media for MotorCity Greyhound Rescue. And today I have a few former fosters on here. We have another board member and maybe even more people hopping in as we go. But this is a recorded session, so you may be watching the replay. But this meeting is intended for people who are interested in possibly becoming a foster home for MotorCity Greyhound Rescue for our sight hounds. So we're going to talk today a little bit about why we have the need for fosters, what our foster homes do, what's expected, the joys that come from fostering, and you're going to get to hear some stories from former fosters, including myself, a little bit about why we love fostering, how it impacts our lives, the dogs' lives, like all the things. So we're going to go ahead and get started. And as people come in, you may hear some people asking questions, and we'll be answering questions, so it'll be pretty informal in that way as well. So, just a little bit about sort of Motor City Greyhound and what we do as far as how we bring dogs in and why there's such a need for a foster home. I think sometimes there's a misconception that rescues have a shelter or we have like somewhere where the dogs go and they really we rely on foster homes. Every dog that we bring into Motor City Greyhound Rescue immediately comes into a foster home. So as of lately, we've gotten dogs from Australia, from China. We're saving dogs from the Chinese meat trade, and we partner with Candy's Hound Rescue International. So with that being said, these dogs are coming in on planes. They're being picked up at the airport, sometimes by volunteers, and then, maybe an overnight or two in a volunteer's home before going to their permanent foster home, or sometimes being picked up directly from the airport and by their foster home and taken there. And so it really is a landing ground for the dogs in terms of, right, like a lot of them have never lived in a home before. They're coming from kennels, they're coming from a shelter in China, possibly. The streets, where they're found in China or racing dogs from Australia. So they've never lived in a home before. So our foster homes truly are, like the first space where they can start to feel comfortable and just learn how to dog and learn how to live in that capacity. And so we are truly, truly grateful for our foster homes. And now, why we're having this meeting and why there's such a big call to action, and you'll really see us posting a lot and talking a lot about fosters, is rescue is tricky in that sometimes we have the fosters, but we don't have the money. Sometimes we have the money and we don't have the fosters. And right now we are in that boat where we have the money to be able to pull more dogs from China, from our partner over there, and bring them into the US to be able to, get into foster homes and then adopted. But we need the foster homes is what we've run into. We only have one dog right now in our care who is probably going to be adopted, within the next couple of weeks here. But after that, right, we're a rescue who is running low on dogs, and we need the homes to be able to put our dogs in. So that is in a nutshell why we're here today. And so, Lorraine, feel free to tune in, chime in if there's anything you want to add, just interrupt me. A couple of things I want to start with, just kind of like basics, like what do our foster homes receive as far as guidance and things like that. And then we'll hear from our former foster homes. First of all, every foster parent gets a like foster guide, right? It's literally, and I remember this from back in the day when I was a foster. It's been since 2020 since I personally fostered, because I foster failed on my last foster. But I personally, my husband and I fostered 17 dogs over the years from Motor City Greyhound Rescue from about 2016 till 2020. So in about that 4 year span, they were just in and out of our home. We used to call them dog runs. We'd be like, there's a dog run, where we would bring in, back when we were taking in dogs from the racetracks in the United States, we'd be bringing in like 10 dogs at a time or so. But still, even from, in recent years from China or Australia, we're getting in a handful at a time. Um, but yeah, a foster home, and every time, even as a foster, I would look over that guide like, okay, I know I've done this before, but let me see. Because it truly does give you everything you need to know, from like we'll have recommendations for the types of food that you're gonna use. We don't provide food, but that is something that you have we give you some guidance on what kind of, high quality food you can feed your hound. But we give you guidance of like how to, take the dog out on a lead and how to, go for the walks and, just kind of things like getting acclimated. Like I know personally, a lot of my greyhounds didn't know how to do the stairs. So
Mhm.
I was like, okay, I got to teach this dog how to go downstairs, right? So just things that you might not even think about, it's in the foster guide. And then in addition to that, you also have access to us as Motor City Greyhound Rescue board members, and even other foster, right? All of us have fostered dogs in the past. We're all very familiar with it. We have had in the past, right? And myself included, where you're reaching out to someone and being like, my dog's doing this. Like, what do you recommend I do? Or I'm having trouble with this. And I know Tina and Dana are on, so feel free. Like, if you guys have any ideas of things in your head that you're like, oh yeah, I remember when my dog did this, because you're going to come across things like that where, every dog is different, where you're like, like, you might have some questions, right? Am I doing this right? How do and I like to share that. We like to share that with people because with this being the first time the dog has been living in a home, right? Like patience, right? Patience is everything. And I always like to say like there is no right or wrong answer for a lot of different things. Sometimes it's just trial and error. But those experiences are very rewarding. Like I still remember seeing some of my dogs who came in and they didn't know how to do stairs. And it was like, they did the stairs. Or one of my foster dogs who would not come out and go to the bathroom because she was in her crate and like, was so scared that she wouldn't even leave her crate, right? And the day that she was left her crate and went outside to go potty, it was like the most rewarding experience, right? But those are also challenges. So we do like to tell our fosters, right? Like you might be challenged. You might get a challenging dog. You might get the easiest dog ever. I've had those as well. You might get the dog who steps on your husband's Legos, one of those big Lego things that cost Star Wars Legos that cost a lot of money. You might get one of those dogs, and that might even be the dog that you beg him to keep. Okay. So just speaking from experience, like it's the full gamut of the way that, you can bond and have those challenges and have those rewarding experiences with your foster dog. So, with that being said, and we'll kind of go, we'll go through a couple other things, but I would like to open it up to anybody who would want to speak on their foster experience. And if not, that's okay. I can come up with some other stories as well. I've got more to talk about, but I'm just don't want it to be me talking the whole time. So, or if there's any questions out there, anybody have anything that you can think of?
No questions, but I can start with my experience as a
Yeah,
foster
that would be
mom,
great.
I
We
guess.
appreciate that.
Yeah, I jotted a few things down because I was like, I got to remember all this. It's been a
Yeah.
while. So I have been fostering. I actually fostered with Regap first, like
Oh, wow.
way back in 2008.
Mhm.
Um, we estimate we had about 15 dogs over the years from that early time all the way through very recently, like a year ago.
Yeah.
So we've seen a lot. We've seen a lot of these dogs that came in first from tracks, then from China. And I always just felt like, it was so rewarding because it's like giving a dog a second chance, right? And it is those little wins that you talked about that is what causes foster fails, I feel, because you feel like, oh my gosh, I'm getting through to this dog. And, it's sometimes I will say through all those 15 dogs, we kept one when he was our very first one,
Mhm.
Stewie, if anyone was around when we had Stewie. And he was a lurcher. And, he came to us and they said, oh, he's probably 10 years old, maybe. He seems like he's really old and sluggish. And he was part of underground racing up north in
Mhm.
Michigan, actually.
Oh, wow.
And they found him in a field and they had an emergency, run up to grab the dog, a dog run. And someone randomly showed up at my door like hours later and said, "Here's Stewie." And brought him in. And after, I would say, probably 2 weeks of being in a safe environment, having consistent food, learning from our other dogs, which I always felt was very beneficial to the fosters. All of a sudden, the vet was like, "Yeah, this dog is not 10. This dog is probably 5 or 6, probably, maybe a little bit older, but his teeth were all messed up from chewing on rocks and things like that because he was essentially a stray." And it's he was the one where we felt like we made such a big difference in like really bringing his personality out and making him, from day one being afraid of his own shadow to, you know, a couple months later chasing squirrels with my other dog in the backyard, and they almost caught one once. So it's like, they bond, they learn from each other, and that was always like the most rewarding part about it, is just sort of seeing them blossom in your care. And they're coming from these unknown traumatic situations, right? Like, you don't really know what they've been through, or what their background was. You're just kind of picking up wherever you meet them in life, and you give them as much of a quality life as you possibly can. And I think that's really the trick, is that if you can like bring out the dog in them and like make them really feel comfortable in that role, I just think that that's the win right there. And then you can, with a lot of confidence, just hand that dog off to somebody else who just wants to give them the best life forever. So yeah, it's always been it's been a very rewarding experience. I can say with most certainty that I think if you showed me a picture of any dog that I fostered, I can tell you their name. I can tell you what their quirks were. I can tell you what we helped with. And, it's just because it's that impactful, I feel. So it's something that is memorable, and it's something that, I wish we could have continued to do more often, but then life gets in the way. Then we started having kids, and then we have toddlers in the house. And I'm like, I would never subject these poor dogs that are just coming from God knows where to toddlers. Like, I would never recommend that. So we had to take a big pause for a long time, but we have fostered on and off over the last few years, and it's been equally rewarding. And now we have whippets. We don't have greyhounds anymore, which is just the next size down for anybody who doesn't know. And so anytime a whippet pops up, I'm like, hey, whippets understand each other. They truly do, even more so than greyhounds do. So anytime a whippet pops up, I'm like, hey, call me.
Yeah.
I think we can help. So that's my new role, I feel.
Yeah. Well, and thank you so much for sharing that, because I knew as people would share things, I'd be like, ooh, like, let me piggyback off of that a little bit. And something you had said about, life happens, right? There's a lot of people who I think a worry is the time commitment, right? Because when you are fostering a dog, you don't know when they're going to get adopted, right? There's not like a magical, like 2 weeks and they're done, they've got a home. You don't know. You could have your dog for 2 weeks. You could have your dog for a month. You could have your dog for 6 months, right? You
Yeah.
don't know until the dog gets in, until we real, you know what I mean? Sometimes we find, oh, there might be a medical issue that we need to address first before the dog is adoptable. Oh, this dog needs to work on this, or maybe we're just trying to match, with
Mm-hmm.
the right home, right? But one thing we are always in need of, in our one of our the fosters that I just mentioned earlier that we have in our care right now is about to be going to a vacation foster for a couple of weeks. So vacation fosters are something we are also always looking for. And those are more short term, like a week, 2 weeks. And that just means that, right, the foster home is going on vacation. I know for me personally, I travel a lot. So when I foster dogs, spring break, Christmas break, 1 week in the summer, like I was somewhere. And so my foster dog would need to go to a vacation foster. So those
Yep.
are always needed. So if you're watching this and you think, oh, I would like, or even a great way to just experiment with how do you like being a foster, we could always use a vacation foster. And
That's a great point, because we've utilized vacation fosters a lot. And
yeah,
it is a little bit of stress where it's like, oh my gosh, who's going to take care of this dog for just a week or two? So, yeah, that's a great point. that if you don't want to make the big time commitment, there's definitely little time commitments.
Exactly. And that is something that we take on as a rescue. We will find the vacation foster because it does need to be an approved foster home.
Mhm.
Our foster families don't need to go out and find someone else. They need to be someone that, that the rescue is choosing, because the dog is under our care. So we just have to make sure that the person who takes the dog is an approved foster. And then another thing too that you had said that made me I just wanted to point out is the idea that the dog that is coming to you day one as a foster is not the dog that's leaving you. Like
Mm-mm.
the growth
Ever.
never is incredible. And something else that I think comes up a lot too, and I worried about this. It's why I almost kept my second foster dog very early on. I did not. Thank goodness my husband was like, no, he stepped on my Legos. We're not keeping that guy. But like I hear this a lot. I can't foster because I'll keep the dog. And
Mm.
sometimes people don't want the responsibility of having a second dog of the vet bills and things because that is something as a foster we cover all of the vet bills. So, right, it is nice to be able to give the home to a dog, but not have the financial responsibility. And so sometimes people are like, well, I don't want to foster because, right, I'll get too attached and I will keep the dog. And I will say that, yes, does that happen sometimes? Of course it does. I'm living proof of that, right? But I also think like the one of the things that I told myself when I was fostering is like the love that I have for this dog, like I'm giving that love with the dog to the next person. And in doing that, what I'm saving another dog because my home is open to another dog. And if I kept that dog, my home is not open to another dog.
That's exactly what I used to tell people
Yeah.
too. I said, first of all, it's a mindset. You're going into the situation where you're like, no, this is not my dog. This is somebody else's dog, but we
Yeah.
don't know who that is. But yeah, no, you're absolutely correct about that. And if you just, and we've always had two dogs. And then I always kept the third spot for a foster dog. Like that's what we did for years. And so that was always my reason. I'm like, if I'm a foster fail, I can't help any more dogs because
Right.
four in the house was too much. So that's an excellent point as well.
Yeah, for sure. So, with that being said, does anybody have questions so far or other stories or things you would like to share? Or
I mean, oh, go ahead.
go ahead. No, go ahead.
I just fostered 3 times. I've had greyhounds since 2002.
Mm.
I have a friend who's fostered like 150, and I call her a saint.
Oh my
I'm like,
goodness. Yeah.
I've only fostered to adopt, but after our first one that we had for 10 years, we needed a financial break. We went through a lot with her. And so we're like, oh, we could foster a senior because they usually stick around for a while.
Yep.
So we brought in 10-year-old Callie, and within the first 2 weeks, they're like, okay, now you have to bring her to a meet and greet. And my husband's like, she can't go. Her arthritis is really acting up. She really did have arthritis. She had had a broken leg that they never treated. And so she came to us hopping on 3 legs. And that's when we knew he's like, no, she can't go to a meet and greet. So we ended up adopting her. And then the two we have now were the other ones that we fostered for Motor City, Ruby and Minnie, which I did want to say that's really what I do appreciate so much too about Motor City is they do allow foster to adopt.
Oh,
And
okay. So
that
others
has,
don't do that. Others don't allow that.
oh no.
Yeah,
Oh,
I
I
was
know
gonna
someone
say
in
I think
another
that's
group who
unique.
was I know someone in another group who was fostering and was like this was their heart dog. They were in love with them and the
oh,
group absolutely would not let them adopt. And I
okay.
was like, "What?"
Yeah, we give
So,
first priority actually to the foster home.
right.
Yeah.
And I really, really appreciate that because sometimes you don't know and you want to see if they're going to be a good fit. But what I would say to people who are fostering is what I have felt, especially, see, Ruby and Minnie, they were different because all the others were from the racetracks, in the US. And so they didn't grow up in like a structured, all my other ones were so structured from being on the track and stuff.
In the
So,
kennel. Yeah.
yeah, I would just really I would encourage structure, like especially with potty training. I felt like the most important thing that worked for me is to like crate them and then as soon as they came out of the crate, I took them right outside and I was just so strict about that. So I felt like potty training went really, really well. But Yeah, and decompressing, like they just really need to decompress.
Yeah.
Um, and I know like if you haven't fostered, like you said, they do not leave the way that they came. They're so different when they come, and especially Minnie, she was so terrified, like how you said your foster didn't even want to come out of the crate. Like Minnie was a totally different dog. I mean, she was just terrified. And so we just offered structure and we kind of let her be, and it took her a while to decompress.
Mhm.
Um, but now she's super social and amazing and everything. But
Yeah.
so it is really, really, really rewarding.
That's such a great point, though, about the decompression that I'm glad you brought up, right? Because
Yes.
it is one of those things where it's like, dog, and you want to just like pet the dog and love on the dog and kiss the dog. And it's like, let them just kind of chill for a minute,
Right.
right? And let it, because that helps the decompression. And, like they're going to build that trust with you too, that you're there and they're in a safe space, right
And
away.
people expect them, I think, sometimes to act like a quote normal dog. And it's
Yeah.
like they don't know what a door wall is. They've never seen one. They don't know, you know what I mean? They haven't, I know for sure mine had not like been in a house. They could tell. I mean, like in any sort of house situation, and everything was new and scary and like, what's that? What's that? To normal stuff that we would think, what do you mean you don't know what that is?
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
remember Stewie shaking like uncontrollably every time someone would pick up a camera.
Mm.
Like that, this is
Oh,
like pre, like, because he was our very first foster. So this is
Oh, like an
pre,
actual
like, good,
camera.
like, cameras on your phone. So we still had digital cameras. And every
Yeah.
time someone would pick one up to take his picture, he would just freak out. And
oh.
yeah, and I don't think he ever really got used to it. So it was just one of those things.
It's one of the quirks, right? That they all have. Lisa, were you going to ask a question before?
Yeah, so been around the from Regat days to
Yep.
Motor City days. And I've been on one run to go rescue dogs out in Boston one time. That
Ooh.
was rewarding. Sorry, that's a tone that goes off in my house.
Oh.
But the reason why I'm interested in kind of revisiting this option for fostering, I'm so glad you brought up the vacation thing as like a
Mhm.
beginner's step to maybe getting into that. Um, there's a possibility that I'm going to return to remote work life at home.
Mhm.
And so I'm just wondering if that necessarily is a advantage or a disadvantage because in a remote work life, I'm thinking, okay, so much attention can be devoted to the dog, its needs, getting to know it, and improving on, behavioral things that it needs to. Again, tones in my house that go off.
Oh, it's okay. We can't hear.
So, good. But I'm considering now as I'm thinking it through that would that be an kind of like a backwards kind of conditioning for a dog that really needs the discipline of, being in a possibly a space where there are people, leave for the day, and then return with some type of regular, um, you know, kind
Like
of conditioning,
structure. Yeah.
in caging and during a day, if that's something that somebody would want. So I'm just wondering if that kind of works as a disadvantage at having somebody at
Yeah,
home.
I feel like there can be multiple opinions to this. And so
Mhm.
if anybody wants to share, I'll start with my experience because I had that experience with my dog Dino, who was my foster fail. Because when we got him in 2020, I'm a teacher. My husband was working from home. I was even working from home, virtual teaching, wouldn't recommend. But he started with us being home, and that was kind of tough for him. And we did have to go through a lot of working with him and a lot of like have him on the camera and leave him for like a little while and check out and putting things up and things away because for him unfortunately crating was not an option. We tried it multiple times. It was not happening. But I'll say 2 points to this. Like one is I think it just depends on the dog because sometimes we do have dogs that come into foster care that are with people who are gone from work and they have separation anxiety. And so that's like, oh, we need to find a home for this dog of somebody who maybe works remotely or is home quite a bit and isn't gone 8 or 9 hours for work, right?
Mhm.
Versus then we do have dogs that like with my dog Dino, right, where I could see it being like, oh, well, maybe he would have gotten used to it if we just started it from the beginning. But I will say, like, even working from home, I think you could still create structure for the dog in terms of like, I don't know what your situation is in terms of where you're working in the home, but like, even if it's like, okay, I'm gonna shut the door and go in my office for this chunk of time where the dog isn't invited in. So
Yeah.
he or she feels like they're alone, and you can
Hmm.
practice giving the dog that alone time of if
Yeah.
you were really gone, you know? I don't know if anybody else has any other input to that, but that's sort of what I'm thinking, and you just don't know what kind of dog you're going to get. So I wouldn't be worried about that. You know what I mean? I
Hmm.
think it just really depends. But yeah, Tina, you unmuted. Were you going to say something?
Yeah, and that's part of the assessment. So when you're fostering, we test out many different scenarios with the dogs. I work at home all the time, but we want to make sure that whoever gets the dog next, we want to know like how do they do when we're out of the house for hours at a time, and so we would try different things depending on because like our last foster was extremely anxious, had a lot of anxiety issues.
Mhm.
So we would instead of we would try the crate. If we knew we were going to be gone all day, we would try the crate. If the crate was too much, then we would gate off the kitchen and then just kind of see how that goes. And so you try these different things, and then so when there's applications that start coming in for the dog, that they go to the foster
Mhm.
home and say, how did they do with this scenario? And so
Mhm.
you have a pretty good idea as to how the dog will react with these things. So it's not so much about your lifestyle, but it's how the dog reacts to your lifestyle or something opposite, and then knowing what a good fit would be moving forward.
Hmm. Okay.
Yeah. No, that's a great point as far as like matching them, right? Like
Hmm.
using that information. It's like data collection, right? In the foster home, and then being like, okay, now let's look at those approved fo or approved adopters and see, and that sometimes is why dogs do stay in foster care a little bit longer, is because we do have approved adoptive homes, but they're not necessarily a good match for that dog. So we're not just, saying, oh, okay, we have a dog, and we're going and doing that vetting process first, and then going to the adopter and saying, okay, these are the couple dogs that we think might work for you. Yeah, it's a great point.
And just a clarification for as far as if you went with the full-blown, you were a foster home,
Mhm.
the foster family is covering the expenses for like medical and all that other stuff, feeding and all that stuff, right?
So food would be covered, like the food needs to be purchased by the foster home.
Got it.
Any of the vetting is taken care of by the rescue. And
Oh, okay. I thought you said it the other way. Okay.
yeah. And then if you did decide you wanted to adopt your dog, then obviously once you sign the adoption contract, any further, vet care is then the responsibility of the adopter. But there have been cases though where there might be a special circumstance with a dog, you know what I mean, that gets adopted, maybe has a pre-existing medical condition that we might say, this certain issue we're going to take care of, even though you adopted the dog, we're going to finish the care on this issue, right? We have seen that happen before too. Oh, let me just admit one more person. Great questions though. Any other questions or just stories, things that we want to share? I see.
I want to bring up medications really quick too, because my last foster was on a million medications
Okay.
because he was on like Prozac and all these different things. So that can also be intimidating to people, where if it's a dog that has a lot of medicinal needs.
Mhm.
But what I found helped with the transition to adoption is I made it my mission to find the cheapest medications that I could get. And so I think that Motor City was really supportive about that piece of it as well, because you're not only taking on, a lot of times these dogs come with arthritis and things like that. And sometimes those medications can get pretty pricey. But I think the Motor City is pretty good about supporting, like, yes, this is part of the dog, the cost of the dog, and here's the best prices that we found, and things like that. So I just want to put people's minds at ease too, that if the dog is coming with those types of needs, I think that Motor City and I think probably the foster homes do a good job of making sure that we know what an estimated cost is and things like that, so that can be a factor for the adopter as well.
For
Yeah.
for the vet care, does Motor City want the fosters to always go to a specific vet? So that's, like it's, say, the one out in Serenity or something like that, when when the dog has to go to the vet, or are they just taking upon the fosters to find a vet locally to them?
I've seen
We,
both. Like we have Dr. Baird, who, forgive me, is he Bloomfield, I think, Bloomfield
That's
Hills.
yeah,
Bloomfield.
he's Bloomfield, I
Bloomfield,
believe.
yeah.
Yeah, West Bloomfield.
Yep.
I
He's
think you can't hear me. I'm
Oh,
trying to talk.
we can hear you now, Lorraine.
Okay, yeah, I've been trying to
Oh no.
I've muted so many of these things. I just wanted to say, yes, you can go to your vet. If you're near Dr. Baird, and if it's a standard, nothing exotic, then we've gone as far as I took a foster to Flint to have an assessment for a bad leg. I
Mhm.
mean, our vet bills are very high.
Hmm.
We do go above and beyond to get the best care for the dog.
Hmm.
We will, when they come in, they're all vetted. They come with a rope harness, their tag, their collar, their leash, everything that
Hmm.
they need coming in. And whatever, and if Carol Leslie was unable to join, she just texted, but she's our vet liaison. And
Oh.
if you saw a problem with the dog, you can contact Carol, tell her there's an issue, and then we make sure the dog gets to a vet.
Hmm. And yeah, like depending on the issue, right? We're gonna say,
Right.
I know from my
Yeah.
own fosters, I remember one time my foster dog was like bleeding and needed to be
Yeah.
right. I went to my own vet and then
Right.
Motor City reimbursed me. So I did have to
Yeah.
pay up front for that cost and then they reimbursed me,
If it's an emergency.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
If it's not something we can make an appointment for.
Right.
But
Yep.
if you have a beloved vet that you go to, then that's fine.
Yeah. Yeah. Great question. We've got about 3-ish minutes left. So any last like questions, anything anybody wants to share for for the good of the group, for future fosters out there?
If Is there any of, I wish I would have known this before
Ooh,
doing it?
great.
Does anybody have anything that comes to mind? Doesn't have to be a bad thing, but just I wish I would have known
Right.
before.
It's a good question. It's been a hot minute since I've fostered, so I'm trying to think about
I think
like,
with every dog it's different, right? Like with it's every time we fostered and we got a new dog, it's like you're learning the dog, they're learning about you, and it's just sort of finding like that happy place, which typically we'll find it. But I would just say like overall, like talking about fostering, I think what I would have liked to know before that is that I wasn't going to keep every dog and that I was going to be the one to just be like, okay, I'm going to turn this dog into a real dog and then pass him along. Foster failing, I think, is not as common as people think. So I'll just say that.
I would do that, yeah.
I'm convinced I
Let,
would
let me
be a
say,
foster fail.
Yeah.
let me
I
say
just
too
don't, I
that
just don't want a dog. I've had 3 grays, loved, but my heart is just, it's cordoned off to going through the entire life
Yeah.
anymore. I can't do it. But to know that mm, for somebody else to go through that and enjoy it, to get
sure,
them to that place. But I think the vacation thing might be the babysit that I maybe need
that's a good
first.
idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I wanted to say too, we also get return dogs. Most of my most of my dogs
Mhm.
have actually been returns.
Oh,
And my last dog had to be an only dog. He had issues with other dogs. So he fit right in. He knew stairs, he knew all about a house, he knew how to
It's a good
go
point.
outside. So, there's also that option sometimes.
Yeah. Owner
Yeah,
surrender.
that's a great
Yeah,
point because my last foster was a return.
yeah,
And then they brought him over to me, and I was like, well, once we had him, we're like, he's fine. Like, what are
Mhm.
you talking about? But again, it's about how the dog fits with the family.
Yeah.
So it just
and sometimes it's that they have a baby and they want to get rid of the dog.
mm.
And then you get the dog and there's nothing wrong with the dog. So,
Right. Yep.
there's always that too. Yeah.
Well, thank you guys so much. I'm going to wrap up here because we got about less than a minute. Zoom's telling me it's wants me to upgrade if I want more time. So thank you guys for joining, asking questions, for sharing your stories. We really appreciate it. Our call to action, if you're watching this, so Lisa, I know you're thinking about it, and anyone else who comes across this video when we post it, go to MotorCityGreyhoundRescue.org, and that's where the foster application is. I am going to hopefully get this posted on social media as soon as I can. And if you have any questions or comments, concerns, anything like that, feel free to comment there. And then our email is on our website as well, MotorCityGreyhoundRescue.org. And then you can click that if you have any questions that maybe are longer questions that you want to put in an email, you can do that as well. So thank you guys so much. Have a great rest of your evening, and we'll talk to you guys soon. Bye.